Welcome to Prime Sports Media. I am Andrew Hernandez here, and today we'll be previewing the Dukane Conference, our first edition of the Dukane Conference for the upcoming 2026 high school football season. So this is our first one, and this is the first new conference here on Prime Sports Media that we're excited to cover. So let's go underway. First up, we have the Batavia Bulldogs. So Batavia in the regular season went 7-2, second in the conference last year. They have made it to the Class 7A semifinals as well last year. So another really good powerhouse when we talk about in Class 7A and also in Dukane, Batavia Bulldogs. Their program that's had a lot of success overall when we talk about the Dukane Conference. So this year, for the Bulldogs, they were returning a whole bunch of talent, a bunch of potential Division I prospects as well what I've been seeing from Batavia. So for Batavia, they're going to be probably stacked. They got Darren Issue, Thomas Prescott, Jack Brown, Charlie Rosengren, Michael Vander Luthergarden, probably one of the best quarterbacks, currently right now in his class, the Wyoming bound as well. So overall, they return a whole bunch of upperclassmen starters as well. So for Batavia, they're going to be stacked again. And next up, we talk about is the Geneva Vikings. So Geneva, they were a team last year that kind of had a little down year as well last year. They went 4-5. Missed out on the playoffs, but the Vikings, same thing too as the Bulldogs, were returning a bunch of upperclassmen starters from last year as well. So for Geneva, they're gonna have a lot of starters coming back. Their team, that was coming off the previous year before last year, were the state runner-ups in Class 6A as well. So Geneva looking to be kind of really good. So this conference, I should say, is pretty stacked. It's a pretty stacked conference. So Batavia and Geneva, these two are two programs that we mentioned that have a lot of success. And another team we talk about is Glenbard North. So they're a team that had a tough schedule. So they went 5-4 in the regular season, and they also went to the quarterfinals. So they returned 4 starters for Glenbard North, our next team coming up. We're kind of going a little fast a bit with this right now. So Glenbard North, they're a team that also went to the quarterfinals, lost to Batavia there. So they returned 4 starters coming in as well. Trey Demukes Battles, Zach Venerant, Jamari Jenkins, and then Miguel Maga I don't know the last name is pronounced it for Glenbard North. Next up is Lake Park. They went 3-6, nothing on them really. They returned 4 starters from last year as well. And next up we have the St. Charles East Saints. They went 1-8, but had a kind of a young roster last year to what it looks like. They had a young roster as well, so they return, from what I see, is 2 seniors and 4 juniors as well from last year. And next up is the St. Charles North Stars out of St. Charles North. They were the conference champions, finished 10-2 and 6-1. Dukane, they went to the 7A quarterfinals as well. Another probably contender for the conference again this year. So they return 5 starters, and then the 5 starters that I've seen right now are seniors: Aiden Bradley, Chris Akapili, Josh Wilkerson, Tommy Vinny, Mason Janke, and then Jonathan Medina as well for St. Charles North. Next up is the Wheaton North Falcons. They went 3-6 this past season. They returned 4 starters: Adam Schilling, Jack Clark, and John Clayton, and Ryan Young. So that's all we have for the Wheaton Falcons. Next up is the Wheaton's Warrensville South. They went 7-4 last year, so they returned. When I was doing kind of a little film on them, they only returned 2 starters, in Andrew Herrera and Jacob Bellows. So, and forgot to mention the other one. So for Lake Park, they returned Tayshawn Coney Smith, Maxwell Wolf, Alexander Gant. These two have kind of 2 last names that were kind of hard to pronounce. And then finally, our last 2, we have Geneva and Batavia. So the starters they return are Ben Peterson, Nelson Venwell, Braden Conley, Tate Burton, Jameson Warbot, Drew Smith, Ryder Kempen, Mark Akins, Lincoln Marcarano, and Luke Aijinoff. Some of the last names are, my bad, pronounced. Some of the last names are hard. And then for Batavia, they got Darren Issue, Thomas Prescott, Jack Brown, Charlie Rosengren, Michael Vander, Lukengarden, Gio Comeo, Cola Mateo, Baron Zane, Luke Gardner, and Gavin McKill. I forgot the last name. Some of these, they're kind of, hard to pronounce. My bad if I got some wrong here on Prime Sports. So next up, right there we said some of the returning players they got coming back for next season for Dukane, schools across the Dukane Conference. Some of them I kind of didn't say when I went through the teams. So next up, we go to our big matchups coming up in the Dukane Conference. So the first matchup that I have written down is the Batavia Geneva. So there's a lot of history in this rivalry. Both teams had a lot of success in the past. So I know this year will be probably a really good matchup between the two at Batavia. And next up, we go to some of our we got a lot of big non-conference matchups when we look at the conference side, non-conference side. First up is Batavia. They're opening up their non-conference with 2 really good teams last year that made the playoffs. So first up, they got Maine South. So Maine South last year went 12-2, finished first in their conference, but this team went to the quarterfinals. So they're opening up week 1 with the quarterfinals team that went to the quarterfinals. Same thing too with Geneva for week 2. They got Oswego for week 2 what I've been seeing for week 2. So basically for both Geneva and Batavia, they're opening up with 2 quarterfinalists to these 2 weeks. So for them, they'll play Oswego and Maine South, who both played each other in the quarterfinals last year in Class 8A. And then for Batavia, week 2, they're opening up their season against none other than Rochester, the Rochester Rockets. Rochester last year were the state runner-ups in Class 4A. So this game, it's going to have a playoff atmosphere to this one with both Rochester and Batavia, both probably 2 of the best teams in 7A and 4A as well. What I'm looking at when I look at this matchup. And then, so Batavia plays Rochester on the road at Rochester week 2. In week 2, and Geneva and Batavia, they play on week 6. I know that I'm about to say week 5 because I'm used to it being, well, I'm used to it being week 5. It's a new, new system, new expansion, but the new playoff expansion just kind of got us, here a little mix up. And then we save the big ones here. We save the big ones for last, and that's both Batavia and Geneva, St. Charles North versus Batavia. So this matchup, I think, is going to be a big one. The defending conference champs versus the conference runner-up. So they'll be playing week 4, and also we're going to throw the Geneva one out. They play week 3 as well when they play St. Charles North as well. Next up is their matchup with Glenbar North. So that matchup with Glenbar North so Batavia plays in week 3 to open up their conference play against them, and then they play Geneva on week 5. So I don't know when Glenbar North will play St. Charles North yet, but that has not yet been announced yet when they'll have this game. But all these matchups are going to be a lot of them are going to be big matchups in the Dukane, because when we look at the Dukane, it's kind of a 6A, 7A powerhouse. So we don't know. I think when we look at this conference, when I look at it look at all the talent, I kind of say that, this conference, schools like St. Charles North, Batavia, Geneva, Glenbar North, and all of them, because it's kind of like the expectation when we look at it here. It's kind of like a conference which you don't know out of date who's going to make it to the state championship by the time Thanksgiving weekend hits. So comment down below who you all think is going to win it here. So we went through some of the matchups, the returning starters, and all that on the other schools as well. So conference play for them opens up week 3. This is the first of many conferences that we've added here on Prime Sports. So make sure to tune in to our next preview. If you haven't seen the Big Northern Conference preview, go back and watch it. And also, for all you guys, have a great one. And also, we'll see you guys, in July at one of the 7-on-7s coming up, or coming up in the fall for football. Have a great night, and also have a great, I kind of forgot what I was going to say. So have a great night, and stay safe out there.